Everyone, Nicole Russo and Ashley Mailloux coming to you for this episode of Spa Babies, where we take an in-depth look at 2-year-old races from historic Saratoga racecourse. You never know what you're going to find. Let's take a look at the field and morning line for Sunday's Spa Baby race. The 5th race on the card has New York bred maiden juveniles sprinting 5.5 furlongs. And I do have to note that this race will have an on-track program notation and announcement celebrating the life of our former DRF colleague, the late Dave Litfin. We miss you, Dave. We will go through this field horse by horse in program order, as we do have a coupled entry. And Ashley, there are a couple of the only horses in this field who have prior racing experience. The majority in here are first-time starters.
Yeah, it definitely makes for an interesting race, Nicole. I've had so many great horsemen over the years tell me how important getting that race day experience under your belt is. And a lot of trainers even told me they love their horses more second time out. But with a vast majority, of the field being firsters, I know you love pedigrees. There's a lot of pedigrees to go through, sales, purchase prices, and all that jazz. So I think it makes it a tough race. And, you look at the coupled entry in here, Antonio Venice and Cadula. I think one is certainly better than the other, but at least they both have those races under their belts.
Yeah, and we will start with Antonio of Venice taking the field in program order. He's from the final New York sired crop by Leoban, who had such success early on with his 2-year-olds that he moved to Kentucky, where he unfortunately only stood one season before his death. Antonio of Venice has made 2 starts for Rudy Rodriguez, finishing second and then third in a pair of races at Belmont. A couple in this field are coming out of that most recent race. He's been consistent, but is just looking to kind of break through there.
He is. He's going to get an equipment change too with blinkers on. He's never raced with blinkers so far in his career. And I think different running styles in those 2 races, but more on the pedigree side, you've talked about the pedigree a bit here. The mare was a winner on the turf sprinting and the dirt sprinting in her career, and the 2 full siblings that we kind of make a note at towards the bottom. They broke their maidens in dirt sprint. So I think he finds himself in the right spot. As we've talked about, the race day edge also. He has those experiences under his belt.
Mm-hmm. And his coupled entry mate is Cadula, who was 5th in that same maiden as Antonio of Venice last out. But I actually want to go back and watch his debut in May at Belmont. He set the pace and was overhauled in the stretch, and the winner that you see drawing off from him there is the Wine Steward, who came back to flatter his foes by winning the Bashford Manor in Kentucky. Cadula does have some juvenile ability in his pedigree as well.
It's interesting to kind of look at this replay. You mentioned the Wine Steward. Nice to see that one come back to win in a very respectable performance. And I think looking at horses going forward, he's looked good in both of his starts. But for me, Cadula, I think, raced pretty well on debut. Second time out, took a lot more respect. You would have thought this one would have stepped forward and was unable to do so. But just like the stablemate, they're making an equipment change as well. Flavien Prat set to ride. And this is just the 3rd full to race, and only one, out of this mare, they've been able to get the job done so far and graduate.
Mm-hmm. Next in the program order will be first-time starter Mama's Midi, who is by the versatile midshipman who can certainly get you a good 2-year-old. This one has plenty of speed and class in his pedigree, and you see some big names from the New York bred program there, including Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup winner Haynesfield, a couple of others who have won New York bred stakes, a couple of others who have won Open Company stakes, and a lot of speed overall across the board. This one might be well-placed and well-meant.
I agree. I think this horse, has the pedigree to back it, and the connections certainly, do well with 2-year-olds and getting horses race ready on debut. And it was interesting to look at the mare. The mare was unraced, but this one's half sibling was able to graduate for the $40,000 tag. And I mentioned Maker, just in general, Michael Maker, 14% with these 2-year-old first-time starters the past 2 years. So I think this one, as we've talked about, Nicole, has a lot going for this one, and looking forward to seeing this one, race in just a couple days.
Dixie Pharaoh was a 6-figure yearling in quote-unquote open company sales by American Pharaoh, a juvenile champion himself before going on to win the Triple Crown. His first 2-year-olds came out running to make him a prominent young sire. And precocity in the female family as well. The immediate relatives of this colt, the name that jumped out at me was Klimt, who won the Best Pal, and then the Grade 1 Delmar Futurity at 2.
Yeah, very good note there for the kind of looking at our last bullet point here. And the American Pharaohs, I think looking at their numbers in general, they're about the 10% with these 2-year-old first-time starters, which I do think is respectable. In terms of the mare on her days on the racetrack, maybe left a little bit to be desired, but has a slew of works kind of getting geared for this debut, and the connections in general, and just in New York when they team up, the trainer and jockey, they are a hot combo.
Albedo is by a first crop stallion who I think is really interesting. Grade 1 Clark winner Leah Frick by Candy Ride. He started outstanding in New York and then moved to Kentucky right after his first foals hit the ground. I think somebody really liked what they saw, and I'll be eyeing that first crop with anticipation. I am wondering if they might need some time to develop and some more ground than Albedo will get here. Leah Frick was at his best at longer distances and as an older horse.
I completely agree, kind of capping his career with that 2018 Clark victory that you alluded to. And so far, we really haven't seen these low fricks. I believe we've only seen one so far to the races, didn't hit the board. And I also completely agree. I think this is a horse that probably wants more ground just based on the pedigree alone.
We'll see another runner by a first crop stallion next in long shot Jake's Orchard. He's from a productive mare, 4 winners from 4 starters, and he's from the first crop of Coal Front, who really was best around a mile, and often that type makes very successful stallions. Coal Front has 2 first crop winners entering Friday, entering the weekend's racing.
Jake's Orchard is 30-1 on the morning line, and we typically see horses that have been training or racing at Finger Lakes not take too much respect at Saratoga, but they've been known to pop here and there. And I think from a pedigree perspective, Nicole, I thought this was one of the better pedigrees in terms of a little bit of unknown, but the Coal Front so far from what we've seen of the 2-year-old first-time starters, 6 starters in general, 2 wins, a second and a third. I think there's a lot to like there. The mare was productive from 6 furlongs all the way, I believe, to a mile and 70 yards. So the price might be big. I mean, this is a horse that maybe needs some race day experience, but the works also suggest an improvement. Had a really nice work just about a week ago over a muddy track at Finger Lakes. So if I was looking at this one in terms of a betting kind of structure, maybe I would use this horse underneath at a big price.
Absolutely. And we always tell you with these spa baby races to watch the board, kind of watch and see, where things might be going on race day, and look at these young horses in the paddock physically. Collected Special is another one who comes in showing some nice works at Monmouth Park, and he's from the second crop of young sire Collected, who so far is already showing the versatility of his own sire City Zip, graded winners on dirt, turf. He has a restricted stakes winning 2-year-old already this season from his second crop. Another solid female family, as Collected Special's stakes place dam has 6 winners from as many starters.
And as you mentioned here, 2 RNAs for this one. Finally let him go as a 2-year-old. Collected, I don't know if I've been super impressed or, disappointed with his 2-year-old first-time starters. I think it's kind of middle of the road. Glad that you pointed out here, though, 6 foals to race, and kind of want to looking at one of the half-siblings here, a 9-time winner, so has had a very good racing career so far. It's interesting to see Tyler Gaffleon ride for Jorge Delgado in terms of the connections. Jorge Delgado decided to go up to Monmouth Park. You can see this one has a slew of works, traveling outside of Florida for once and going to Monmouth for the meet, and now brings the New York bred to Saratoga, which I think is a great sign.
Ice the Kicker will be the first Saratoga starter in the name of Melanie Giddings. She is best known at this point for her work with graded stakes winner Maple Leaf Mel, who we hope to see later in this Saratoga meet. This gelding also from the first crop of his sire, Solimini, who he had some 2-year-old form and just well-bred to be a stallion. He's by breakout sire of sires Curlin from the female family of useful stallions Midshipman, Frosted. Solimini had 2 first crop winners already entering Friday, and what we thought was a live Spa Babies runner on Friday. This is a horse who I'm really looking to make an impact on the New York bred program.
Nice to see this one sell at higher prices kind of through those sales that you can see, ending with that sale in 2022 for $82,000. I love that we point out here the half to Unique Unions, who's been pretty good so far in her career, won at 2 for 12 in her career, but she's had a lot of minor placings too and has done well, I believe, in some stakes races against fellow New York breds. And this one's half sister raced recently for Bill Mott on debut, Nolita, and ran pretty well. I think finished 3rd. So just kind of curious to see this one. Obviously, Melanie Giddings, you've mentioned the name, why it rings a bell. I had this one working well prior to that first work at Saratoga, and I think it was probably just a maintenance drill.
Yeah, that's absolutely how I interpreted that work tab as well. Always a Warrior is a homebred for a strong New York bred program in Mr. Amore stables, an extended family with some class. You see a grade 1 winner there in the family. This is one that I'll probably take a wait and see approach with. Both his sire and dam have tended to have more success a little bit later on with their foals at 3 with some racing experience.
You said it very eloquently, Nicole. Just kind of looking at Poseidon's Warrior, just with those 2-year-old first-time starters, it's a low percentage. It is 5%. It's interesting to note, though, that both siblings to race, they won, but they were trained by Kelly Breen. So Carlos David was able to get this one for Mr. Amore's stables. He does very well with his 2-year-old first-time starters. Looking at the past year, 3 for 11, 27% in terms of wins, 55% in the money. So I think there's some things to back from a training perspective here. But as you mentioned, the pedigree maybe leaves a little bit to be desired at this point.
And then rounding out this sizable field is the only other horse with racing experience, a Knight's Courage. And if you believe experience counts, you'll likely get more value here than with the Rodriguez pair. Like the Rodriguez pair, he is coming out of that June 23rd maiden at Belmont, in which he was 6th. And like the Rodriguez pair, he'll add blinkers on Sunday.
He will. And I think the big thing with this one, in contrast, I guess, to the Rodriguez runners, really wasn't involved on debut. So maybe this is a focus thing. Maybe it's also to get this colt more engaged early out of the gate. And, looking at the full sibling and the half sibling, they haven't shown much, at the races in their career. So I'm wondering if you look at this one in terms of getting this one back on track, if the equipment change will help, and maybe we'll still need a couple of races to develop.
As always with these 2-year-olds, make sure you're picking up the Clocker reports at DRF.com, produced daily throughout the Saratoga meet by our colleague Mike Welsh and his team for some insight into how these young horses are preparing, especially as most of them head toward debut here. It is top pick time. Ashley, I think we're using a couple of the same horses, but in different orders. You are going with Collected Special, who has some strong works at Monmouth coming back to the state of his birth.
Yes, he does. And I think looking at Jorge Delgado's numbers, Tyler doesn't necessarily ride for the outfit very often. So I thought that was an interesting combination, just knowing when both have spent time in Florida. We never really saw them pairing up. So that was a positive sign for me. Had a slew of works. I thought the most recent drill wasn't a maintenance drill, but was actually a pickup drill where this horse was actually looking a little sharper in the mornings. But I talked to you, Nicole, and just kind of looking at this field, we've talked about race day experience usually helps. So I think if you're looking at a horse with race day experience, the one Antonio Venice does look like the horse to beat on paper.
Yeah, I hate to be so chalky here, but I just can't get away from the experience of the Rodriguez runners. Antonio of Venice has been consistent so far, and the addition of blinkers might just focus him and put him over the top. But if I'm looking at a price behind them or a potential upset, I am going to look at Ice the Kicker. As I said, a good young trainer, a good young sire, and a horse with some sharp works, as you pointed out, before a local maintenance drill. It's 6128 for Ashley. It's 171A6 for me. It's Spa Babies. It's Saratoga right here all summer on DRFTV.